There will be a day when Trump is gone, but my dishonor will remain. Good morning.
Good
to see you
morning.
both.
Oh, dear Lord, John. So, yesterday, just what are your top thoughts on what we saw and heard yesterday?
At this point, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what Merrick Garland thinks, and it matters what people think. I mean, I keep saying these hearings are not about what happened on January 6th. These hearings are about what's going to happen in 2024 and whether the American people will care enough to see this as a clear and imminent threat rather than something that was done. But, I think the committee's done an amazing job of just laying it out masterfully, brick by brick.
Yep.
The hearings the other day, at first I thought, wait a second, why are you doing it in this order? The hearing before yesterday, they started off by saying how Trump knew it was all a fraud in part one. Then in part two, they showed how it really was a fraud. And I thought, why didn't you switch those? Prove it was a fraud first, and then show how Trump knew it was a fraud. But it was all because part three was how Trump grifted $250 million off of his slobbering goober racist supporters. And I apologize to all slobbering goobers who don't support Trump. But come on, man. It's like there's no doubt about this. They tried to steal our democracy. They're trying to do it again. We know there was election fraud because we heard it on Donald Trump's tape with Ratzenberger. And, the worst thing Donald Trump has done is make Mike Pence look like a good, noble man. I am so angry that future kids in history class will read about how Mike Pence was a brave man who stood up and did the right thing. No, Mike Pence is an awful man. He is a revoltingly fake Christian. He was picked for the job because he was the fakest Christian in all of America.
Right.
He was the most homophobic governor of all 50 states. And it's like we're in this era where the bar has been lowered so much that whether you're Liz Cheney or Bill Barr or Mike Pence, if you tell the truth about one thing, you'll be hailed as a hero. And Travis, I'm sorry, but you and Chris haven't committed treason in months.
I know.
And no one's praising you.
Right.
But just because Mike Pence didn't help with treason one time, we all have to respect him.
No, I think you're 100% right. And, you brought up the fake Christian thing. And there was something that happened during the hearings yesterday that that just reminded me of that I wanted to talk to you about was, and we were sitting on the couch watching it yesterday, Dylan and I, neither one of us speak Bible. That's why I'm glad you're here today.
Oh, my.
They started out with, it was, I believe, Greg Jacobs said that they started their day out with a prayer. And then when they were in the loading dock, while the Capitol was under assault, he talked about pulling out his Bible and reading the book from the book of Daniel. I don't personally carry a Bible around with me. And then they also talked about how Mark Short texted Pence at the end of the night something about a marathon, which I don't think is a term or a race. It sounded like something from one of these newfangled translations of the Bible that the hip kids are reading. What did you think about all that, like that Bible talk and looking to the Bible for guidance on January 6th?
It doesn't surprise me that they would quote from the book of Daniel because they're never going to quote the Jesus parts, right? This is my big hang up. You can quote from the Bible all day, but these right-wing people, their Bible is the golden calf and the book of Revelation duct taped to a Left Behind book. They're not going to quote the character of Christ. And whether you believe in Jesus as a literal guy or the first original innocent brown-skinned man executed by the state or the divine son of God or just a piece of poetic literary license, whatever you believe, the Republican Party does not fight for what this character taught. That's why I talk about it so much and do so much material about it, because they actively legislate against everything Jesus taught. And you can't be a homophobe and follow Jesus. It's really simple. Jesus overturned or challenged a lot of Old Testament law. If you want to follow the Old Testament laws that say man with man's an abomination, you have to stone adulterers to death. And I'll let the homophobes work that out with Mr. Trump, okay? So, look, there's no passage where Jesus drives the gay wedding cakes out of the temple. Most people pick and choose the parts of their holy books they want to believe, but only fundamentalists of all religions pick and choose to justify being really mean to people. And that's Mike Pence. His religious freedom law had nothing to do with religious freedom. It had to do with pretending Jesus has the same hang-ups you have. So what I'm trying to say is Mike Pence is a bad guy. He was always a bad guy. And if you have to go to Dan Quayle for moral and constitutional advice,
Thank you.
You're not doing so good. But the fact is, he does deserve the praise for doing the right thing one time. And that's what it's come to. Liz Cheney, ideologically, she's no different than Dick Cheney. I was telling y'all, I have a friend who's an actor. We had lunch last week. He was saying, I love this Liz Cheney. I'm sorry. I'd vote for her for president. And I was like, hold on, boo-boo. Liz Cheney still wants to put women in jail for abortion. Liz Cheney still thinks the Iraq war was a great idea. Liz Cheney still thinks climate change is a myth and oil companies should be given hundreds of millions in subsidies just for being themselves. She's like Dick Cheney, except she's not lying about one thing.
Yeah.
And I respect her for it. She's doing a great job. But let's not forget what this is all about. We can disagree with people's ideology and still really appreciate that they want to preserve their democracy and save their party.
Yeah, no, you brought up Dan Quayle there really quick. I wouldn't go to Dan Quayle for spelling advice personally.
30 years ago this week.
Yes, yeah. but Pence did also go to Judge Ludegan. He did also have this to say. I just want to get one more Ludegan here. Number 7.
What the President of the United States wanted his Vice President to do, I would have laid my body across the road before I would have let the Vice President overturn the 2020 election on the basis of that historical precedent.
I mean, that's the thing. At least Pence had somebody like Ludig in his ear giving him that kind of guidance.
I mean, do these right-wingers want Kamala Harris to decide who the next president is? Because that's the message I'm getting.
Yeah.
That Kamala Harris gets to pick who wins in 2024.
Yeah, no, and by the way, I have a specific question for Glenn about that coming up in the next segment, because what they're setting up right now with all of these elections and these the MAGA, the 26, the people who believe that 2020 was stolen and all of that stuff, they're putting the pieces in place for what they tried to make happen this time to happen in 2024. And the scary thing to me is we could be in a situation where Kamala Harris has electors that don't represent the will of the people for various states. I mean, depending upon who wins, and right now I don't have a whole lot of faith in Arizona.
No.
I mean, David Boebert was on with us yesterday talking about how in New Mexico there's enough Republicans in the state legislature to hold up their verification of just this primary election that just happened. I mean, what's going to happen in 2024 when we have these states who basically go to war with themselves over the results? And is it going to be the people voting for this, or is it going to be the Secretary of State or members of the state legislature that vote for president?
I mean, look, guys, I defend Joe Biden all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll defend Joe Biden all day long. He's a good president. Yes, he's old. Yes, he has a stutter. I don't mind a president who has to, take naps as opposed to a president who's morally comatose.
Or a president who has to take Adderall.
Yeah, and I've defended Joe Biden against ageism so many times that I need a nap. But I will say this. It was on Joe Biden's watch, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this. It was on Joe Biden's watch that the Taliban swiftly and violently took over Florida and Texas and Missouri and Tennessee and Arkansas and Alabama. And what Florida's done is pass a law that other states are passing, essentially saying that if the state legislatures, in other words, Republicans, decide they don't like the results of a certain county and it doesn't smell right to them, with no evidence whatsoever and with no due process, they can throw out those results. They have, and by the way, don't forget, Ron DeSantis just survived his challenge, destroying the 5th congressional district of Florida, which is half black, has a black Democratic congressman, and Ron DeSantis has broken the 5th district up into 4 smaller majority white districts and has completely diluted the black vote from Jacksonville to Tallahassee. Guys, the fix is in.
Yeah.
They're doing it right now.
Yeah.
The past doesn't matter. I don't care if Trump never goes to jail. I don't need to see orange clash with orange. The only thing I want to see Trump do is run for president again so he can tear DeSantis apart and hopefully lose the popular vote for a third time. This is already in progress for 2024. They're doing it.
Yes.
And Ron DeSantis is much more dangerous than Donald Trump.
I agree 100%. He is scary, and you know, it's not just Florida's doing this. Like, what was it? I believe it was Texas. There was there's only it was Sheila Jackson Lee, and I think oh my gosh, why am I blanking on the other gentleman's name from Texas? He put forward called for Trump's impeachment before anyone else.
Okay.
Anyways, they're in neighboring districts. They've pushed those two districts into one to eliminate.
Yeah.
There's only 2 black representatives who are Democrat in the state of Texas, and they put them both into the same district to force them to run against each other. I was out in Palm Springs a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine who works in news in Houston. And he's like the openly gay guy that the Republican women love. And he went out there screaming, he's like, why aren't people voting if you don't like what's going on? 'Cause he was on the air when oh my gosh, Uvalde happened. And I had to react to that. It's absolutely, so it's not just Florida, it's Texas, it's doing it. A bunch of other states are doing this, and I'm worried about what's going to happen after the 22. You keep saying 2024. I'm worried about the 2022 election right now.
Well, I'm worried about 2022 insofar as is anybody going to show up to vote. I'm really tired of the corporate media that is terrified of getting a tiny tax cut under this president, doing everything they can do to try to minimize this president and hurt him any way they can. I'm tired of 2 Democrats in the Senate who are as bought and paid for as every Republican in the Senate and have stopped the progress that 81 million Americans have voted for. More people voted for this president's agenda than have ever voted for any person's agenda in the history of this country. The sad part of it is, if we don't stay engaged, it meant nothing.
Right.
And so, you know, it's only going to be a red wave if everybody stays home. But if everyone stays home, we're still going to be fighting for the same things. And I still think that when these hearings release more evidence, when Joe Biden relieves half the student loan debt in this country, and when these guys destroy Roe v. Wade, which they're going to do, I'm hoping it will awaken the sleeping giant. We're all news nerds, and Stephanie's listeners, you know, are people who care and are engaged and are deeply sexually attractive. They're already going to vote. They're already involved. The trick is, how are we going to get everybody we know to agree to get 10 people they know to show up and vote? Because once again, it's the most important election of our lifetimes. This is America. Things generally have to get worse here before they get better. And I'd hate to think that we have to see the fascists get too much power, but we thought they were done after Bush Cheney. We thought they were done after Trump. Fascism never sleeps. Normal people do.
And also, I want to just get in here before we let you go. Speaking of sexually attractive, you had some thoughts on, and being better also, you had some thoughts on Lauren Boebert before we went on the air.
Oh, God. Well, I mean, there was this whole rumor this week that Lauren Boebert had been a call girl who had 2 abortions. And obviously, it's really hilarious. It's really appealing. I can understand why it would be fun to believe something like that. But this is a great example of how hate makes you stupid.
Yeah.
And the American Muckrakers PAC was credible because they were the ones who had released the Madison Cawthorn video. But there was video there.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
This whole thing, I saw so many liberals writing, I don't care if Lauren Boebert was an escort. I don't care if Lauren Boebert had 2 abortions.
It sounds
I
like
care
something
about
she'd do. Yeah.
No, you do care. We don't want, because not just to be the good guy, not just to be the you know, in the right, not just to not spread disinformation. I mean, I love Occupy Democrats. I love them. But even they said, RT, if you think this might be true. And I'm like, no, because that helps Lauren Boebert. Then it's like us crying wolf. Then when there's actual crimes they've done, people will be less likely to believe it because they believe that one time. And it helps Lauren Boebert fundraise off it. Guys, Lauren Boebert is so evil and nasty on her own.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, if you can't, you know, rally support against Lauren Boebert, she's a high school dropout, arrested multiple times. She believes QAnon. She lied about a guy being beaten to death outside her restaurant. It was actually a meth overdose. And she married to a guy who showed his digit to teens in a bowling alley.
Yep.
Yes.
That should be enough, people.
Exactly.
That should be enough.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
Thank you
John,
for taking us to church there.
Looking forward to seeing you here in Los Angeles for the Sexy Liberal Save Democracy tour.
I'll be there, and I'll also be in LA joining you guys in studio this summer before then. And by the way, I saw Springsteen come out with McCartney last night. I talked Rude Pundit into going. McCartney closed his tour last night. He turns 80 tomorrow, and he played for 3.5 hours. over 30 songs. I brought my kid to his first ever concert. It was just crazy.
That's
great.
a way to start concerts for the kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
All right.
John. Thank
Thanks,
you so much
John.
for joining us.
I'll see you all tonight on Sirius XM Progress.
That's
You got
right.
it.
And the John Fugelsang podcast.
The John Fugelsang podcast. Download it right away.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, John. You have a good day.
Ow.